All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Let me share screen, get us oriented to our conversation. Oops. I did the thing that I said I wasn't going to do, Lizzie. There we go. So today is like a meta brain club. Brain club about brain club. We are going to be hearing from a community panel of brain club participants about the impact of connecting with community. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. So if you're new to Brain Club or new to All Brains Belong programming, so we're a nonprofit organization working to improve the health and belonging of people with all types of brains. And we do this in 4 different ways. So we have a medical practice, and then we integrate medical care into social connection and employment support. And we have community education programs like this. So you are invited by being here as a Brain Club participant. You are invited to be part of our community. So all of our various ways of being involved. So Brain Club is our education program for purposes of demonstrating All Brains Belong's approach to neuro-inclusive culture, for purposes of shifting broader community awareness about the issues of importance and concern to the neurodivergent community, and to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And so that you can go forth into your lives and carry forward what you take away, and that's how culture change happens. Everyone is welcome at Brain Club. Brain Club is for neurodivergent folks and people who support them. It's for people who aren't sure what their neuroidentity is. And it's really for anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. So the scope of Brain Club, this is a program where we provide education and information about neurodiversity and modeling neuro-inclusive culture, meaning new ways of being in community. We have community panels, guest speakers, book chats, all kinds of ways we model that in order to provide a better understanding of neurodivergent experiences through the stories of our presenters. For many people, this is a way to feel less alone. As we do so, we often critique systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met. We also bright spot alternatives. This is not a place for medical advice. It's not a place where we provide therapy or a place to process individual experiences or individual emotional support. We have programs that do those things, but this is our education program. It's not the best or appropriate way to address personalized needs or requests. It's also not a place to critique individuals or groups of people. There are multiple right ways to participate here at Brain Club. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks or anything else that needs doing. After our pre-recorded community panel, we will have some opportunity for discussion, and you can do so with mouth words or in the chat or however else you'd like to. You also don't have to. Observation is a valid form of participation at Brain Club and all of our programs, really. In addition to affirming all aspects of identity, this is a program oriented around the collective community. We protect the space so that people with all types of brains can participate and feel safe. We invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like. Maybe pick up some new words and concepts. Lizzie, can you link the Brain Club Digital Resource Library in case folks want to browse that while we watch? We have glossary in some of the entry, but you can also ask if you hear a word or concept that you're not familiar with. Feel free to ask in the chat or explore in any other way, and think about how what you're learning connects to your life. That is my visual support to make sure I can see the chat because Zoom always closes it on me. There we go. Now I can see the chat. So you can feel free to use the chat. You're welcome to ask questions or comments in the chat about the content that you're seeing during the panel. For example, validating other people's comments or sharing how what a panelist says impacts you. Asking questions, I said. The only thing we ask is that if you are going to use the chat, we ask that you type into the big box only and avoid reply threads. Because when the chat gets really going, that bounces the chat up and down, and then my brain cannot keep up with that, and I get dizzy, and then I'm unable to participate. So if you could please use the big boxes, that would be a huge help. Thank you. If it's your first time at Brain Club, as I know it is for many of you tonight, keep coming back. It might take several times to figure it out, and Lizzie's going to put some frequently asked questions in the chat. All right, so as always, a huge thank you to our Brain Club supporters. Without you, we would not be here today. So thank you to everyone who has supported Brain Club tonight and throughout the year. Believe it or not, Brain Club is almost 4 years old. We're coming up in a few weeks, we're coming up upon our 175th episode with over 2,100 people having been part of this space. And for a lot of people, this is the first, maybe one of the first places where they've been able to participate with community. Maybe it's a place where folks have found words to describe their experiences, or maybe to realize they're not alone in some of their experiences. And that's not an accident. It's that really Brain Club is a co-created community program. So we build Brain Club every year, we tweak it, and throughout the year we tweak it. Maybe every week we tweak it sometimes. Building Brain Club around the problems that people tell us that they're living with, and we keep checking in to make sure we are still doing what we say we're doing. And so we're going to talk about that today. So as many of you know, we just took the past couple of weeks off from Brain Club, and that's because at all of our programs here at All Brains Belong, we start off with a very intentional design to make sure we are delivering and having the impact that we're trying to have. And so every September, we do interviews and surveys so that we can better understand what the impact Brain Club is having. And that's what tonight's about. So Brain Club over the years has shifted as the needs of the community has shifted. So when we began in January of 2022, it was a small group of like 8 people, and I gave really formal presentations and all that, and then we'd have some small group discussions. Then Brain Club got bigger, and we started recognizing that what really we needed to happen is that we needed to elevate lived expertise. And so we started doing community panels. In 2024, we wanted to pay more attention to how neurodiversity fits into all of the other aspects of diversity and how ableism and racism and classism and all the other isms, how are these all connected? And how could we be brokering alliances to promote intersectional inclusion for all community members? And then, of course, now in 2025, we've been reinventing an education program. How do we transform these conversations into a classroom type of experience as Brain Club continued to grow? And so, as I said, we start all of our programs with very intentional design, and this is what our logic model for Brain Club looks like. So we start every program like this. We talk about like what are the problems we're trying to address. So in this instance, we want to be looking at loneliness, ableism, internalized ableism, all the other isms, and how are we going to address that? How are we going to intentionally plan out Brain Club so that we can promote understanding of access needs and having people feel less alone and shifting their narrative of themselves and their sense for the way the world should be so they can go out and create that world. That is what we have set forth to do at Brain Club. And so over in the past month, we collected some impact. It's not too late to give us your feedback, by the way. If you missed last month's opportunities, there'll be more of them. So this is what we learned. So this is looking just at survey data, mostly folks who were long-term participants. who participate pretty regularly, mostly live, and mostly folks who are not patients of ABB's medical practice. We asked what format of brain club do you find most helpful? And there's a lot of, because we all have different brains, not surprisingly, we had lots of different preferences. That's why we have different formats of brain club and we'll continue to do so. And then we asked, looking at impact around, because of your participation in Brain Club, how well do you understand access needs, be able to express access needs? Um, do you feel less alone? Do you feel less shame? That wasn't exactly something that had been designed for, and some people that was true. And how well do you feel connected to the ABB community? And so there's certainly areas where not everyone's experience was that they had improvements in these areas. Although we'll talk about some trends about some of the differences we found. Lots of folks learning in the areas that we intentionally incorporate into the program. And what we did see is that folks who did not feel connected to the ABB program were more likely to be non-patients, and that makes sense. And so we will be really intentional around how everyone who participates with the All Brains Belong community in all different ways can have lots of different ways of engaging. The formats people enjoy vary. And so going forward, we're going to be really clear about labeling the type of brain club in the title. So when you look at the schedule, we invite you to come to the ones you find helpful and skip the ones that you don't. And now we're going to look at some qualitative comments from surveys and interviews. And then we're going to watch our panel. So some of the themes we heard about were around connection and belonging. Also, not just for oneself, but as a way of inviting other people in, family, friends, people wanting to learn about neurodiversity from their lives, learning language, learning to accept oneself, and to be able to advocate for healthcare needs. So here's some quotes. It is creating a safe space for folks to connect and learn about their brains, and maybe for the first time learn that they and their brains are not broken. I've learned so much about my own body, how to help others, about my access needs, about providing accessibility, terms like social disability model and double empathy, refer to this as the cheat code. um, there have been a few times where I've been stuck in bed and alone and joined a brain club event. It's really helpful to have a space to be when there isn't any other. Removing lazy from my vocabulary. I am not, nor have I ever been lazy. Let's talk about that shift in narrative. Lots of people throughout my life, I knew many things weren't working for me. I never thought of this as relating to access needs, though. I just thought I had character flaws. I now see that a lot of this is simply reflecting the ways that a brain like mine would raggedly interact with a neurotypical world. I learned about access needs at Brain Club. Before this, I just thought my needs were too much. Now I know that these are actually access needs. So if you're new to Brain Club, access needs means anything that we need for full and meaningful participation in our lives. Now I know these are actually access needs, that everyone has them, and that I don't need to shame myself for them. I learned a whole new vocabulary to describe what was happening: access needs, masking, autistic burnout, internalized ableism, urgency culture, micro trauma, finding a common language based on common experiences within a community we hadn't known existed. Ooh. We get to watch people who are at the heart of All Brains Belong as they model what a neurodiverse workplace can be like. The starting point is always to acknowledge each participant in their full diversity and to find ways of respecting those diversities in the course of collaborating. And on these foundations, the workplace is built. Brain Club introduced me to a community of people who changed my perspective on how I live in the world. I recognized in their stories difficulties at work, in healthcare, in relationships, out shopping that I had experienced myself. I found myself no longer alone with these difficulties. They were the things we could recognize in each other. Ooh, I just got chills. And so, with that, let's watch our panel. I'm gonna stop share and reshare because I don't remember if I clicked the share sound button. Here we go. And you're welcome to use the chat as we watch.
What brought you to Brain Club?
Okay. Well, first, I want to note before we get started, I have a pizza cooking in the oven, and I felt comfortable doing that before this interview because I knew ABB would understand that this is a way that I can multitask, and that makes me feel more comfortable, and I'm very fortunate for that. What brought me to Brain Club? I heard about Brain Club through my primary care physician, who recommended the practice just in general, All Brains Belong, and mentioned Brain Club as a way to sort of get introduced to it. So I finally went, and that was just completely like overwhelming for me, like in a great way, like just feeling so many validations about who I am and just how I am. And that was just fantastic.
I'm one of those undiagnosed Gen Xers that there's so many of us, and I just started to unpack being autistic 5 years ago or so, and I am well into my 40s. So that I had a lot to learn and unlearn, and yeah, I didn't know anything really other than the stereotypes, and Brain Club was like fun and community, and like the things that we talked about, I came away with like new insights about myself and how not only my brain worked but like other people's brains. I felt like it was the best like fun continuing education.
Work for Upper Valley Services, and I know Dr. Hauser did a training for us. She's done a couple trainings for us, and in that mix, I happened to hear about All Brains Belong, the organization. So I went to that website because it really resonated with me. Her training did, but just a broader idea. And then on there, I saw that the free community-based things, including Brain Club, and I was really intrigued. Loved that idea in an age where everybody monetizes everything. I always knew my brain was a bit different, but 40-something years of feeling broken, feeling like something's wrong with me. And it really was through Brain Club, especially when the month I was focusing on access needs, that really just clicked at home.
This is what connection is. Like, I feel like I was brought up thinking that connection was something different, like even intimacy. Like, you're supposed to be touchy-feely, and this is what you're supposed to do when you have a friend. This is how you hug a friend or love your friend, not a romantic friend, but this is how you act with a friend. And then, this is how you're supposed to act with a romantic friend. Well, like that act of affection isn't something that I always feel comfortable with. So it's really been amazing for me to just have all of these connections with being a patient at All Brains Belong, but then also when I do go on Brain Club and I hear other people that aren't patients at all, to hear their experiences, information that they're seeing is, I'm like trying to think of my wording, but it's universal, it's universal, and it's not just for one neurotype. And I feel like as an employer, realizing, I always knew that I was different. So now realizing, okay, we can change that word. And instead of just being different, like I'm unconventional, I have a different outlook on life. I see things differently. I notice things that maybe other people don't notice. And then having that grow because I'm in an environment where the education about my brain, about the feelings that I get, and then connecting them together has been extremely beneficial for me to move more fluidly through my life. This this is how I am, and now I can explain it. And I've had a lot more positive feedback or interactions with people than weird eye rolls or, people like, okay, I'm not going to talk, and they turn around, because that's totally happened to me. It's been amazing to see other people that are not me, but they sound like me, after finding out that I'm autistic, and finding out my son's autistic, and then learning all of this stuff that ABB has been able to help me with through being a patient, but also Brain Club, because you cover so many things.
One of the ways that I think is most important that ABB helps in uniting people is in sort of the example they set in how they interact with us as individuals and the community at large. Just listening to us, asking us if we have other access needs that they may not be aware of. Uh, and then there's no pressure to participate in any activity that might be brought up or to participate in a certain manner.
There's so many different neurotypes, and when you can learn that there are different neurotypes, that's when you can be able to accommodate a varied brains. And not only in my own personal life, but as an employer that has employees, I want to make sure that my employees are getting the same benefit that I'm getting at All Brains Belong, without them necessarily knowing it.
Yes.
Like, let's just make this a normal setup of trying to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at. We're giving them options as far as doing their jobs. We're asking them questions that maybe another employer wouldn't ask them, to find out, are you getting the resources? Are you getting the support that you need? And I feel like Limelight Restoration at this point, the growth in the last year has been phenomenal, and I couldn't have done it without All Brains Belong supporting and helping and teaching me, so that I could go and I could pass this information that I think is absolutely important.
There's 2 points I knew about the self-advocacy, but I still felt like I had to fight for it, like I had to apologize for it, and I still have to show up in the world for the comfort of others. So All Brains Belong, especially Brain Club, has helped me to become more comfortable in my skin with being who I am, and that I don't quite fit other people's expectations or how they work, but that's okay.
It was really hard for me to find community when I moved to Vermont. I had a lot of health things come up and realized I was autistic, and we're living in Vermont and don't have any kind of community or healthcare. And things got pretty bad, like really, really bad. Mast cell activation, COVID, made me aphasic. I lost my ability to use words or to read or understand people talking to me. Yeah, and then my physical health just deteriorated. Like, I felt like I kept tripping and falling and things. I couldn't get my feet under me, and I was drowning. So my life has very much changed since finding ABB. I've been introduced to, really simple things that have made a huge difference. I've had some pretty like dramatic interventions that have made a huge difference in my life. Things I never would have thought were accessible. I feel supported maybe for the first time in my life. I feel like I understand what a medical model that really makes people feel secure looks like and feels like for the first time. I've got friends through the community. Like, we have a place to talk about the things that are really hard with other people that just receive it and reflect back, yeah, that's hard. We don't have to, there's so much context we don't have to explain. I never thought I would find this kind of community or model of healthcare in this country. So yeah, everything's changed.
That because of the fact that you don't have to be a patient, you don't have to live in Vermont, you don't even have to present with a formal diagnosis in order to be a part of it. You can just show up. You know, I've had at least once a family member who sit in. I share the videos on the Upper Valley Services Learning Community. So again, so people can see and hear more and understand more of the experience of those.
You don't even have to say a lot of words. It really is something that you feel comfortable with, you know? And it's important. It's really important because it is so lonely out there. When we have a lifetime of it and we're not able to find connections that can fulfill that or even have someone help explain it. I think that's the biggest thing is people aren't understanding what's happening to their bodies. They don't know what these sensations, why they're here, what they're coming from. Like
When she says it's not a support group, because I'm in some long COVID support groups, and those were very validating and for building a sense of community and belonging and connection, validation in a world that doesn't understand you. First, they didn't understand, you know, well, what makes it different? But then came quickly to see what makes it different is yes, there is support coming out of it, but it's that half an hour every week of investing in us and sharing with us, whether it's the focus on access needs or it's about the medical world or it's about resources that are out there or hearing other people's conversations in a curated way while still giving us that space and chat and afterwards to talk about it a little bit makes it not a support group, but much more than a support group.
Is your life different since joining the ABB community?
ABB has really just given me a lot of confidence in my life just by validating way I feel and many of the ways I act that I thought were things which I needed to correct or just were some flaw in me, and find out that they are a part of me, and there are still the aspects that I'm going to have to deal with interacting with the world at large, but I can find a greater sense of comfort in who I actually am thanks to ABB.
There's a few things. I was told a long time ago that all true healing happens in community. It doesn't happen in an individual. And the thing about being neurodivergent is that we're often feeling like we're not part of anything and that we're not included or that these models aren't for us. And that can be devastatingly isolating. And I think most people in the community have had some experience of that, and we can change that for ourselves and for each other.
I really feel like people just aren't aware that things can be different, but they just don't know it.
Yeah.
Because they were taught to do it this other way, like this is the only way, you know, whether it's how they were brought up with their family or from watching TV or, you know, their neighbors, their friends, parents, however we learned it, because that's how we learned stuff. It's really hard to force yourself every single day to live up to something that's not even your expectation. It's someone else's expectation.
And it's hurting you. It's not
Yes.
your expectation, it's someone else's expectation, and it's the way that you were told you had to do
Yes.
it.
That shame and guilt is of an unseen person that you're afraid you're going to be feeling when they're like, oh, you didn't do the dishes, or oh, how come you're so tired after getting home and making all the food and feeding everyone and now you're not going to hang out with me?
And I think that one of the things that we do together in this community is we are, because we're all in different stages, like we see someone doing something differently and we're like, huh, that's interesting. And then you see other people doing something different, like, huh, that's interesting. And it's at least for me as a member of the community, it gives me permission to do something else. I can say, all right, what do I really need right now?
Yeah. And then, I mean, even to add on to that, so you see other people doing other things and maybe you try it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for you, right? that can become extremely frustrating. And it's like, oh, I can only do this one way. When people are not taught multiple ways of doing things, problem solving, when people are not taught that, how can we expect them to do that? And then that's where dysregulation can come from, because I can't do this, but yet, well, how come? Well, I can't. And I feel like that's what I grew up with, like, especially with reading and math. Well, how come I can't? I could never explain why I was not able to do a lot of math, especially like word problems. You know, I couldn't say, well, it's because I have a hard time reading in the first place. And now you want me to figure out what the math equation is within this paragraph. Like, I don't care about how many, shells Sally's selling at the seashore. I can't figure it out because this is just too much for me to read. If someone that I had met and heard me growing up, which it never happened, but if someone had heard this and been like, huh, maybe she needs another way.
Since joining the ABB community and learning so much more about autism and ADHD, I thought initially that having this knowledge would help me cope better in the world, but it does help me cope better in the world, but I become frustrated because now I'm aware of certain things that do bother me.
But watching Mel's journey, Dr. Mel's journey, watching how she modeled behaviors that I'd never seen before. She modeled pacing, and for months it seemed like she was in the dark every time we talked to her, and that was wonderful. I loved it. Like, thank you. We're not hiding. We're just laying down people that need to lay down, and we figured out what we need. I remember feeling like this community is like the underlying drive is completely eradicating ableism. First in ourselves, but then also how can we change that systemically? And for me, a lot of that has been just normalizing me. I had some interventions that really changed everything, and Sierra just phrased it in a way, well, it just seems like your body likes that, not like I'm sick or weird or there's something wrong, but this is what my body needs, and we can do that, instead of a model that tries to force me into a peg that I don't fit into, or a hole I don't fit into. I feel like this model really sees people and takes out the pathology and just, how can we help? That's more than I ever could have hoped for.
If I had then gone to somewhere else to get an understanding of autism, I think it would have been more in a clinical matter, looking just at autism and not a holistic view, which I get through ABB. And I think any treatment that I was getting for autism from someplace else, I might view it as more as a way to cope or mask in, quote, the real world, as opposed to finding a way to, heal and live in the regular world just as me.
Probably also the way that you think about yourself. Like I
Yeah.
said, as a person with both a math and a reading learning disability, my dyslexia shows up as fatigue. I always identified as a quote good reader, but I always had headaches and I was always exhausted and I didn't know why. Math, I just didn't understand. I didn't understand a blessed thing that anyone said about anything involving numbers. And I grew up being like, well, I can't run a business. I can't do this because it involves numbers and I just can't, and I'm incompetent. And I find out how truly incompetent I am.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how I felt, and when I was in fourth grade, I really wanted to be an architect, but I never pursued it. I didn't take SATs. because what's the point? Like, I knew that I wasn't going to pass. And my mother had told me not too long ago that when I was in high school, she was told by the school that not to expect much from me. I know now I'm able to, in a lot of ways, maybe not always the right way, but I can at least spread the information even to my son who has dyslexia and dyscalculia, who I've taken out of school, and I'm trying to figure out how do I teach him because I was never taught.
How is your life different since joining the ABB community?
Um, I, I think the fact that I just feel more informed of, some of the resources that are out there, some of the current topics that are going on, and also hear, just getting to hear other people's experiences and things that resonate with them that are being shared when people are commenting in the chats. Um, I think the more validation that I can get that way about what I'm experiencing from other people's me toos and yeses and or informed, the more it helps me to be comfortable in my own skin again.
I had meltdown on Sunday. And I've probably had them before, but I never knew what it was. I haven't had a whole lot of them. But this rocked me and it used up all of my resources, and it was terrifying. And there was a little voice that was like, I think you're having a meltdown and it's going to be okay. And I had a lot. It was big, and I had a lot come up and a lot of shame, because of the stigma associated with autism and with the way our nervous systems respond. And I feel like the resources that I've had access to in the community, the vulnerability in the community that I've experienced made it so I could navigate that for the first time a little easier. And so I could give myself a little more grace and space.
The affirming nature that comes from ABB helped to give me the permission to be me. Yes, you can be scared. Yes, you can get things wrong still, but you now have a community of others that I've been searching for my whole life. I've them so many times. I know there's other people like me out there. I just haven't found them yet. Like, I found them. I don't even all know me, and I don't know all of them, but I know that they're there, and I hope to meet as many of them as I can. But I think this is like my destiny. This is where I was supposed to go, and it's makes me feel like my life is so worth living, where at a younger age there were so many times that I was skeptical. I questioned, what is my purpose here? Why am I even here? Do I even really want to be here? And instead of asking those questions, now I'm like, I know that when my time is over, I've now gotten to this place where this is what waiting and living was worth. This is where I needed to be. And this feels good. So I thank you. I mean, I thank Mel. I thank ABB. I thank all the people on staff. I thank Brain Club and the people that come on, all of the presenters that come on there, and it's phenomenal the way that we have it running now. Like, I love that you have support with, this is what you taught us. You taught us all this information, and now Brain Club is like blossomed into this amazing place. Let us show you what you taught us.
Hold on. There we go. Right. Except I think I have to reshare. There we go. First off, I just want to extend a huge thank you to our panelists, Paul McAleer, Weaver Goldsmith, Joe Grabowski, and Stummer Stelter. Thank you so much for your insightful and authentic and deeply moving, deeply moving thoughts that you've shared with us. Um, I would love to open this up to anyone who would like to share, either out loud or in the chat. Could be, what are you taking away from what you heard? And if you have been someone who's been participating at Brain Club before, what has Brain Club been like for you? Those in the chat. Joe shared, thank you so much for valuing everyone's story. Mandy says, this is my first time in this space, and I'm grateful to the panelists for sharing and to this group for existing. I look forward to more Brain Clubs. Welcome, Landy. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm always really interested in what people's experiences are right from their very first Brain Club, because like that's so very much something that we think about. We want and Liz Carney, one of our community moderators, Liz, if you're around, if you want to say this better than I am, but like hi Lynn, welcome. Oh, so many new folks. I'm so glad you're all here. Wonderful. Liz, when she hosted Brain Club in August, talked about how much we think about how someone who's been coming for 4 years, how we want their experience, and someone who this is their very first hour of Brain Club, like how are we making sure that everyone's needs met, and just like the energetic, the intangible aspects of the space. How do we create a space that meets the full spectrum of access needs and stages along a journey. Welcome everybody. Thanks, Liz. Ahmed says, missed the intro, but caught some powerful message on the tail end. Oh, thank you so much, and grateful to all contribute to the space. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're all here. Sarah says, feeling very optimistic about finding community and learning a lot after hearing the panelists. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We look forward to continuing to learn together. I think Brain Club is so very much about learning and unlearning together in community. And this month, the other topics that we'll be exploring are all around the idea of radical acceptance, some things that we learn about that we don't like, but yet we can acknowledge that they are real and they are happening, and what do we do instead? And so we're going to be applying this to the workplace next week. We have a staff panel talking about acceptance of having a finite capacity as human beings at work. And we look forward to you joining us next week for that conversation. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Good night.